Hello everyone, welcome to the Langfocus channel, and my name is Paul. Can you hear me this time? I know in the last live stream my voice was a little bit quiet, or very quiet. How about today? So if you can hear my voice, write something in the chat, or write yes, or thumbs up, or whatever you want. Alright, so this is episode 2 of Langfocus Cafe. This is Langfocus Cafe. Let me take a sip of my coffee. This is my Indonesia mug, my Starbucks mug that I bought in Indonesia. Good, someone said they can hear me. Excellent. I'm happy to hear that. Langfocus Cafe is a series in which we talk about language-related topics in a more relaxed way than I typically do in Langfocus videos. In Langfocus videos, I give a lot of information and they're quite intense, but in these more relaxed sort of live streams, we can just kick back, talk about a subject with a little bit less of a little less preparation time on my part, and also a little bit less need to focus really intently on your part. We'll just talk about a subject. So at first I'll get into the presentation. Later on I'll look more at the chat, and then I'll check any super chats if there are any, but I'll do that after I talk about this topic. So at the top, in the top right corner, you can see a little title page. So what's the topic of this live stream? The topic is Linguists versus Prescriptive Grammarians, or it's about two different approaches to language, descriptive and prescriptive. Now, before I really get into that, I'd like to think back 4 years to this video I made. This video was called 10 Mistakes That Native English Speakers Make. And that video made some people really angry. After I made this video, I got a lot of messages saying I'm unsubscribing. Someone created a Reddit thread saying he's so disappointed in me for making this video. People told me that they're going to get me blacklisted from like Linguists events and things like this. All based on a misunderstanding. Why were they angry? Well, basically they were angry because some people very strongly disagree with the idea that native speakers can make mistakes. I said the word mistake in the video. I referred to a lot of things as mistakes. That makes some people angry. Basically, I was trolling in the video. By trolling, I mean I was saying things I don't necessarily believe in order to start a discussion in the comments about the issue that I'm talking about in this live stream. I did that by juxtaposing two different points of view, two different approaches to language. One is prescriptive and the other is descriptive. Now in the video, I sort of role-played a prescriptive point of view and then threw in little bits of descriptive to make people question what I was saying. That was my intention. I was trying to be creative, and some people just didn't get that, I guess. So what are these two points of view? If you are prescriptive, that means you prescribe. You tell others how they should speak or write. If you are descriptive, that means you describe how native speakers speak, rather than tell them how they should speak. Now, linguists are descriptive. They believe in the descriptive approach to language. That's one of the core basic concepts of the field of linguistics. Description, not prescription. Now, if you are prescriptive, that involves a value judgment. If you tell people how they should speak, that involves a value judgment. Prescriptivists believe that one particular variety of the language is the best. That's the prestige variety. Usually it's the standard variety or the formal written variety. But if you think about it, there's nothing inherent about any particular variety of speech that makes it better. Nothing inherent. That means there's nothing about it that makes it better unless you believe that it's better, unless you think it is, right? Those varieties of speech that become prestigious don't become prestigious because they're better. They become prestigious for social or historical reasons. And sometimes it's kind of an accident of history that one specific variety becomes the standard. I'll give you an example. The capital of Japan used to be Kyoto before the Edo period. Then it moved to Edo, which is now referred to as Tokyo. the Edo dialect became the basis of standard Japanese. But imagine, if the capital had remained in Kyoto, then the Kyoto dialect would have become the standard. There's nothing inherently better about the Edo dialect, or now the Kanto dialect, which is basically the basis of standard Japanese. It's just a result of a historical event, right? So there's nothing specifically better about that variety. It just happened to become chosen. It's kind of similar if you think about the UK, that has a variety of accents that differ by locality and socioeconomic background. There are certain accents that are considered more proper than others, proper in quotation marks, or more posh, I guess. In particular, RP, or received pronunciation, which you might hear referred to as the Queen's English, or something like that, right? The Queen's English, because the royal family speaks using received pronunciation. But there's nothing inherent about received pronunciation that makes it more proper. When we hear it, we might have that impression or that feeling like, wow, that's proper English, or that's posh English, but there's nothing inherent about it that makes it posh or proper. People associate that way of speaking with high status people, especially like high status people of past generations, like the royal family or, aristocracy and that kind of thing. But imagine if high status people had spoken with a Cockney accent, it would be considered the more proper accent today. That sounds kind of crazy to us today, because now people associate the Cockney accent with sort of working class people, or maybe people judge it and look down on it and think it's like a lower class accent, or like maybe like distasteful people speak it, or something like that. But that's just a result of history, right? If high status people had spoken like that, it would be considered the proper accent, and we would have that emotional reaction to it. So linguists avoid subjective value judgments. They don't say like this variety is better than the others. They only observe different varieties and say what they observe. They say what patterns they observe, basically. Linguistics is essentially the science of language. So the goal is to observe language objectively and to develop theories of how language behaves based on what is observed. Okay, so there's a kind of misunderstanding or misconception that people who are prescriptive believe in grammar. People who tell you how you should speak believe in grammar, but other people don't. It's not really true. Linguists believe in grammar too, but it's a different approach to grammar. It's descriptive grammar. Under descriptive grammar, every variety of a language has its own grammar. It could be a different dialect, or it could be a different sociolect spoken by a different social class or different ethnicity or something. Every variety has its own grammar. And every native speaker speaks their variety perfectly. Like they follow the rules of their variety flawlessly, even though they might not follow the rules of the standard language flawlessly or a different variety flawlessly. They follow the rules of their variety flawlessly. And I use the word rules sort of flexibly. They're not rules if we're just observing how they speak. So you can see I added this little caption on the screen. When native speakers speak using the grammar of their spoken variety of language, it cannot be wrong or bad. According to descriptive grammar, it can't be wrong or bad. That doesn't mean you can say absolutely anything and that it's a good example of that language. Like if I said something like this, "Park go I yesterday did yes." That's kind of nonsensical, right? It doesn't make any sense. No native speaker can understand the sentence unless they intentionally like rearranged it and added some grammar to it. The sentence doesn't make sense on its own. But under descriptive grammar, you wouldn't say that that is bad English. Rather, you would say it's not English at all. It's simply not an example of English. Maybe the words are, but the grammar is not English at all. So it's not bad English, it's just not English at all. That's the typical way that linguists and the descriptive point of view look at examples like that. grammar that no native speaker would use is considered ungrammatical. If no native speaker would say it, then it's just not an example of that language or that variety of language. You could say it's wrong, but linguists tend not to use that word wrong because it shows a value judgment. They would rather say it's ungrammatical. It doesn't match the grammar of that language. My voice is getting hoarse. I need a sip of my coffee. Okay. Under prescriptive grammar, there's only one kind of valid grammar, and that's the grammar of the standard variety, right? And non-standard varieties of the language are considered wrong because they don't conform to the standard variety. They don't stick to the rules of the standard variety. So that can get kind of crazy sometimes if you think about it. According to prescriptivists, this sentence is wrong. I can't get no satisfaction. That's bad English. It should be, I can't get any satisfaction. As crazy as that sounds, as silly as that sounds, for the context that this song is in, right? I can't get no satisfaction just seems better, right? And why? Why does it seem better in this context? It's because it's informal. It's a rock and roll song. It's not a classical music song. They were young at the time they made this song. The topic of the song is sort of a casual topic. So why not use something informal like I can't get no, right? But according to prescriptivists, this is wrong. You can't use this kind of English, or it's just plain wrong, or you sound ignorant, according to them, or whatever. This is also wrong, according to prescriptivists. Star Trek fans are starting to get angry already. To boldly go where no man has gone before. That's bad grammar, because there's a split infinitive. The infinitive is to go, and because there's an adverb in the middle, to boldly go, that adverb splits the infinitive, and prescriptivists think that that's bad grammar. But where I'm from Western Canada, and where I'm from, people speak a variety of English that's as close to standard English as you can get, basically. And people where I'm from use split infinitives like this. We say to quickly go, to slowly go. It's fine. You can say it the other way too, to go slowly, to go quickly, but to quickly go, to slowly go, to boldly go, that's perfectly fine, even though we speak a form of English that's as standard as you can get, without being like super traditional and following all the prescriptive rules. It's basically standard English, right? So it has to be to go boldly if you want to make the prescriptivists happy. So I see a few major holes in the prescriptive point of view. One of them is what I just hinted at now with the Star Trek example. The prescriptive point of view even considers standard speech wrong if it doesn't follow strict, out-of-date rules that nobody naturally follows. Even the standard language changes over time. Like if you read a book from this year versus a book from 100 years ago, you might notice like some differences, some slight differences. If you go back 200 years, then you'll see even more differences. So the standard language does change, but prescriptivists try to hold on to very old rules that don't really apply anymore, because even the standard language has changed. So that example of to boldly go, right? The split infinitive, that's something that's totally fine in standard English these days, at least when people are speaking naturally and not thinking about rules. Another example of that is can I, to ask for permission. Prescriptivists say you can't ask for permission using can I, you have to say may I. But where I'm from, if you use may I, that's extremely formal, almost uncomfortably formal for most situations. Can I is much more suitable for the vast majority of situations. And again, like I said, people where I'm from, native speakers where I'm from, speak something that's as close to standard English as you can get without writing it according to really strict rules. So that's the first major hole I see in the prescriptive point of view. Second one, the point of view of prescriptivists seems to be that written language is the source of the spoken language. Like it seems like they think the written language is the source and all the spoken varieties are deviations from that written language. But that's not where the written language, that's not how the written language developed. The written language developed from varieties of the spoken language. Usually it's one particular variety that's chosen, and it becomes the basis of the written formal language. Maybe it's adjusted and standardized and tweaked a little bit, but it comes from one variety of language. But that doesn't make that variety of language the source of all the others, because all of those varieties of language existed at the same time before that one was chosen. You know what I mean? So it's just wrong to say that the written language is the source of the spoken language. It isn't. So why is all this important? What's the big deal about all this? Well, there are some reasons. One major reason is that the prescriptive point of view can lead to the demonization of communities that speak a non-standard form of language. Now, I know as soon as I say this, someone will say, Paul's trying to be woke, Paul's trying to be politically correct, and they'll complain about that, but I don't think about politics and that kind of thing. It's not about that. This just makes sense, right? If you have a prescriptive point of view and you think only this way of speaking is correct, then people will look down on the people who speak differently, right? They might think they're stupid, they're too stupid to speak properly, or they're too lazy to learn grammar, right? So think about it. If you're a kid, if you're a 10-year-old kid who grows up and you speak the same way as your family, you speak the same way as everyone in your neighborhood, but then people tell you that's wrong. You speak badly. That's bad grammar. You should speak differently. Imagine if you're a kid and you hear that. How's that going to make you feel about yourself, right? You might think there's something wrong with me, or there's something wrong with my family, or there's something wrong with the people in my neighborhood, right? Because we all speak the same. Why is it wrong? So it's just a kind of, it's just a sort of unfair way to look at people by saying that all of those people speak wrong, even though there's a lot of them, right? And it can have negative effects on their lives. Some people might avoid talking to them, might avoid becoming friends with them. They might not be able to get jobs because someone overhears them speaking that way, even if they speak standard English sometimes, right? Or not only English, but a standard language, right? So that's basically what I'm getting at. It can cause harm to people who speak that way. Okay, I've kind of already addressed this stuff. So what's my opinion on it? Do I hold a descriptive or prescriptive perspective? I think you probably get the idea already. My point of view is basically descriptive. I say basically for a reason. I'll get to it in a second. I agree with the point of view of linguists that all varieties of a language used by native speakers are equally valid and that there should be no value judgment. As informal spoken languages, right? In their particular context, there's nothing wrong with them and they're all equally valid. I also agree that it's extremely obvious to me that non-standard varieties of any language do indeed have their own grammar. It's a mistake to think that their grammar is random or that it's full of a bunch of mistakes. It's full of random mistakes and deviations from the standard. That's not correct at all. It's just not true if you look at a whole bunch of examples from any non-standard form of a language and you look at the patterns. There are indeed patterns that native speakers follow. And there's nothing inherent in the grammar of the standard language that makes it better. It just happens to be the one that was chosen to be codified, written down, and sort of given that role of the standard language. Now, with that said, I do think there is a function for a standard language. There is a role for it, and it serves a good purpose. For example, if everyone wrote in their dialects, it might be confusing for people who speak different dialects. If people spoke to each other in using different local colloquial vocabulary and things like that, there might be confusion. So the standard language is like a bridge between those different varieties, right? And it makes sense to have a more consistent form for writing, right? So I think it makes sense to teach people how to use the standard language according to its rules and to teach them when it's suitable to use it, right? So I think that makes sense. But this can be done in a descriptive way. It can be done without teaching people that they're speaking incorrectly, right? Rather than saying, the way you speak is wrong, we could say like this. We would say it differently in the standard language or in the formal register. So think about the difference. Like if you're saying this to a kid in school, if you're saying like, your grammar's wrong, that's very different from saying it like this. Your grammar is correct in informal situations and when you're speaking casually with your family and friends, but we would say it differently in the standard language or in formal situations. See, that's a very different, it has a very different feeling to it. It's a very different message than saying your way of speaking is wrong. Even though your intended goal is the same, the intended goal is to encourage them to learn the standard language for its appropriate situations. Right? It's a simple thing that a teacher can do to make a child feel confident and more encouraged to actually learn than to give up and see themselves as not good enough. Another example of something you could say, like, it's important to speak differently in this specific situation, so let's practice that, right? Rather than saying, your way of speaking is wrong, you could say, well, let's say like in high school, if you are teaching students how to succeed in a job interview. I'm not sure they do teach this, but they should teach this in high school. You could teach people like you're speaking informally, but you have to speak formally at a job interview. So let's practice that. Let's practice how to speak formally in that situation. So that's a different way of looking at teaching the standard language, right? Okay, so now that I've talked about those two different approaches, I've talked about the descriptive approach and the prescriptive approach, I want to take a look at some parts of the video that I mentioned at the beginning of this stream. So I'll just look at some of the slides and talk about them from a descriptive and prescriptive point of view. I won't do all of them, but I'll do a few of them. The first one, misuse of the word literally. For example, she literally has thousands of pairs of shoes. So in the video I talked about, I was role-playing a sort of prescriptive point of view to bait the audience into critiquing it, basically. So this is one example I gave. So according to a prescriptive point of view, we have to stick to the original meaning of this word literally. Meaning like the message is exactly according to the words of this sentence, right? There's no metaphoric meaning or anything like that. People often use literally as an intensifier just to mean like really or like extremely or something like that. And the word literally has been used like that for hundreds of years. So you can't really say it's wrong if it's been used like that for hundreds of years and lots of people use it like that because we're describing how people use it. Now, I myself don't use it like that because I like to be clear about what I mean, and I know some people might misunderstand, but I can't tell other people how to use this word because I'm not the CEO of the English language. I just observe how people speak and talk about it, right? Another example, confusing the past form and past participle of irregular verbs. So here's an example I gave in the video. I should have went to the party. Prescriptivists would say that's wrong, and it might sound wrong to some people's ears, depending on the variety of English they speak and where they're from. But lots of people say this, like, I should have went to the party. So the prescriptive, officially correct way is I should have gone to the party, right? According to prescriptive grammar. I sometimes use sentences like this for some verbs. Like I don't know where I learned it, just as a kid, that's how I learned those verbs. For some of them I use the past form instead of the past participle. I should have went, things like that. I sometimes use a construction like that. If I notice it and I'm speaking formally, I'll try to correct it. But when I'm talking to my friends, I say it and I notice other people saying it, and it's normal. Here's another example of it from sort of the opposite angle. This is present progressive. He's already drank 2 beers and it's only 4 p.m. This example, I think, is a little different. I would probably amend what I said in that video, because this one, like here, instead of using the past participle, it uses the past form. He's already drank 2 beers. I don't think that's just like a result of choosing freely, like the first one is. I think this one is for a different reason. I think people say he's already drank because if they say he's already drunk, it sounds like it has a different meaning. It sounds like he's intoxicated, right? He's already intoxicated, rather than he has already had some drinks, right? It's a different meaning than he's already intoxicated. So I think people are choosing the past form here for a reason. It's because it sounds distinct from the adjective of drunk. But yeah, according to prescriptive grammar, you would have to use he's already drunk 2 beers. I wouldn't say it like that, though. I would say he's already drank 2 beers, even though my English is quite standard. Okay, another example. Confusion of few and less. Few and less. So, you know, the original way they were used, and the way they're still largely used today, is fewer is used for count nouns and less is used for non-count nouns. But people often use less for count nouns. So the example in the video was, I eat less cookies than I used to. A prescriptivist would say, you have to use fewer. I eat fewer cookies than I used to. But these days, a lot of people say less. They say less for count nouns. I eat less cookies than I used to. What's another example? I have less lessons than I used to. I don't know, something like that. People often use less for count nouns. So that's something that's just becoming common. I think it's a change that's taking place. The distinction is disappearing for count nouns. Okay, here's another similar one. I think this is also a distinction that's disappearing, a change that's in progress. Confusion of is and are, but it's in specific contexts, like with here and there to show like presence or to show existence. So here are 3 cookies for you. That's the traditionally correct form that prescriptivists would say is correct. Here are 3 cookies for you. But people often say, here's 3 cookies for you. And it's the same for this. Like, there are 7 people at the party. There's around 7 people at the party. That's very common. And I hear these a lot. And I think even I say sentences like this without thinking. When I'm speaking naturally without monitoring myself, I do say this kind of sentence. So it's hard to say it's incorrect if lots of people say it. You could say it's like informal, or you know, it's not completely standard, or it's not used in formal situations. That's fine, but you can't really say it's incorrect if lots of people say it. Okay, and number 7, double negatives. This one is controversial, and was controversial in that video because it's used in lots of dialects, right? In lots of varieties of English, it's natural to use double negatives. And again, when I was a kid, I did use double negatives before anyone told me not to. So that means it naturally comes from the grammar of my variety of English. For example, I don't have no money, man. So the prescriptive way is I don't have any money, man. I didn't talk to nobody. I didn't talk to anybody, right? That's the prescriptive way, anybody. Nowadays, now I always use any and anybody because this was drilled into me by teachers and parents, right? But when I was a kid, before anyone told me it was incorrect, I used double negatives all the time. So that shows it's naturally part of the language, just not part of the standard language that we were taught later, right? Another one, this one went way overboard on purpose. In the video, I kind of progressively made them more ridiculous to make people dispute them, right? Confusion of lie and lay. Lie is the intransitive form, it's an intransitive verb, like you lie down, and lay is the transitive verb, like you lay something down. and then we have the past form and the past participle form of each. If you look at the sentence, he lied on the floor. Lots of people say that. He lied on the floor. According to traditional grammar, there is no form lied. It's for the intransitive verb, it's lie, lay, lain. So the correct form would be he lay on the floor, according to prescriptive traditional grammar. But I've never heard anyone say he lay on the floor. I don't think. Maybe I have, but he lied on the floor or he laid on the floor are much more common, even though laid is originally transitive, not intransitive. But people use it with the intransitive meaning now. So this is one that nobody really knows. Like, no one's ever heard lain. Most people don't use lay for the past tense. This one is just, it's kind of all mixed up, and native speakers sort of use it however they naturally learn it when they're kids, I think. Nobody really knows the old traditional rules. Okay, so that's kind of all I have to say about that topic. I wanted to give you just a rundown, an overview of those two perspectives, and then show some examples from that video that I mentioned at the beginning. If you're not sure what video I'm talking about, it's one that I made about 4 years ago, this one here, 10 mistakes that native English speakers make. A video that was basically intended to start a discussion about descriptive and prescriptive points of view, but instead it started a big old flame war against me because people didn't really get the irony in a lot of what I said. Okay, I'm going to have a look at the comments and stuff. I see the chat is going strong. How many people are watching? Let me see. I'm going to have a look. I see how many concurrent viewers? 434. All right, that's not bad. I'm going to have a look at the super chats, just in case there are some. Last time I missed some of the super chats. I see there's one. Let me see if I can read it. Okay, it's Broca Raton or Broca Raton. Who are these prescriptive linguists? Is there something we can read? Also, do you think if everyone had different grammar, this would cause problems? Sorry, let me come back to the main thing here. I don't think it would cause problems for everyone to have their own grammar for their own variety of the language, if they know the standard language as well. The standard language is basically like a bridge between the different varieties. So if I have a different dialect from you and I speak the standard with you, that's fine. Or, you know, in a lot of languages, people don't completely use the standard language, but they use elements of it to make their speech more understandable, to sort of meet in the middle, and then they can understand each other without completely speaking the standard language. So I think it's fine to have your own grammar for your own variety. That's just how it is. But the standard language exists to sort of bridge that gap. And prescriptive grammarians, who are they? Well, that's basically all the high school English teachers who tell you that you're doing it wrong. Someone asked, will this video be available later? Yes, these streams, the Langfocus Cafe streams like this, are live and available on the channel for the first 2 days, and then after that I archive them on Patreon. So patrons can see the older ones. Other people can see them on the channel if they catch them in the first 2 days. So if you come and check the channel often enough, then you'll catch it within the first 2 days. And if you get notifications from me, if you hit the notification bell on one of my videos to get an email whenever I release a new video, then you'll find out as soon as they're live. Like I get the emails too. Today, when I started the stream, the email came to me and said, Langfocus is live, and it came quickly within like 10 seconds. So you can maybe catch it live if you get notifications, or if you're online at that time, or you can watch it within the first couple days. Let me see. I don't know where I should look to see the chat in real time. Okay, here it is. Someone asked, what is your opinion as to at which point a dialect becomes a different language? 80% mutual intelligibility, 70, 60. It's hard to say, and there's no real universal standard for that. It depends on the language, whether it's considered a separate language or a dialect. It seems to depend on what native speakers think to a large extent. If native speakers of those two varieties consider it a different language, then it becomes a different language, right? There is no universal standard. Sometimes it's based on intelligibility, but sometimes there are languages that are like 90 or 95 or almost 100% mutually intelligible, but people consider them different languages because one of them is connected with their culture, but the other isn't. Things like that. But to me, you know, I sort of consider them the same language if they're 90% mutually intelligible. That's just, to me, like how I would consider them. I'm seeing the chat in two places. It's kind of confusing. Okay, I'm going to read this comment and see if I understand clearly. Dark Knight Films asked, Paul, is it possible to be descriptive in one language and go back and forth between prescriptive and descriptive in another language? Well, kind of. I guess if you're talking about varieties of a language, I think it's fine to be prescriptive in the standard language as long as you're not like being prescriptive towards vernacular speakers. Like, I know the Arabic language, for example, I think people are very prescriptive about the standard language, how you speak it and how you write it, because that's the role it plays, right? It's meant to be the standard written formal language. I think that's fine to be prescriptive about that one variety in its context, but I don't think it's okay to apply that to all the dialects and say those are wrong, those are not correct, or whatever. Let's see. Okay, let me catch some more comments. I'm seeing a lot of little things here. Hold on. I'm going to turn off some chat program that's appearing on my screen. Okay, Paul, is the language from the country that they colonize have a different dialect? Is the language from the country that they colonize? I'm not sure what you mean, Mr. Impasta. I'm not sure what you mean, but if you mean, like, for example, like American English versus British English, or like European Portuguese versus Brazilian Portuguese, then yeah, I guess you would consider those different dialects or different varieties. The word dialect is sometimes a little dangerous because some people use it as a weapon. Like some governments refer to non-standard varieties as dialects to suggest, like, don't speak those, only speak our national language. So I never use it like that. I always use it to mean like different varieties of the spoken language, not the standard variety. But yeah, I think often the people in a colony start to speak a different variety of the language of the colonizers. I think that's common. In Brazil and America, lots of places. Let me see. I'm just looking for comments that I can answer kind of off the fly. Someone said, you once said that you know French, and I was wondering which version you learned, French from France or French from Quebec. My French isn't that good at the moment. I mean, I can read it and stuff, and I sometimes listen to the news in French, but I haven't spoken it really for a while, for quite a while. So I think I'm very rusty right now, but the kind of French I've studied has always been the French of France. And even in Canada, if you study at school in Western Canada, it's mostly the French of France, like metropolitan French. But sometimes the teachers are from Quebec, so you do get a little bit of influence, like they teach you some words that they learned in Quebec. Yeah, so it's mostly the French from France. I got distracted by a different comment. Someone said, in the UK English, we say on the fly, not off the fly. Did I say off the fly? I'm not sure what I said, but I say on the fly, off the fly. I'm not sure if I say that. Maybe I did say it. If that just came out of me naturally, then I guess it is something I say. I'm not always conscious of those things. Let me look for more comments. Let's see. I'm just browsing and looking for comments I want to answer. There's lots that would be hard to answer just on the fly, or would be, or I just don't feel like answering them because I've answered them a million times. Someone said, I like your videos. Thanks. Well, thanks to you too, Yang Yang, Mr. Yang Yang. Someone said, do pigeon experiments work? I don't know what you mean. What do you mean by pigeon experiments? Someone said, hey Paul, I'm curious what your linguistic credentials are. When I use your videos as reference, people wonder who you are and why you're qualified to speak on linguistics. Well, yeah, you probably shouldn't use my videos as a reference for something like university papers or whatever, because I really think of Langfocus as just an edutainment channel. It might be a good one, and it might be one that I work really hard on, but I don't hold it to an academic standard in the way I reference things and stuff. So my qualifications are, I don't know. I mean, I teach English as a foreign language, and I teach it at the university level. And I studied English language and linguistics, a sort of combined program in university. So I have some background in linguistics, but for the most part, it's a passion that I've done in my free time. I've read lots of books on linguistics, and I've studied numerous languages. So it's more of my passion. Some people think because I'm on the screen, they think he must be like a world-renowned top-level linguist who all linguists know. And well, if that was the case, I probably wouldn't spend 200 hours a month on YouTube making videos, right? I would probably be a tenured professor at some Ivy League university. This is my passion, and I put a lot of effort into it, into the videos and into my study, just for fun, just because I love it. A famous linguist, Steven Pinker, criticizes those strict grammarians in his book. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, all linguists do. It's a basic precept of the field of linguistics. Like on day one in Linguistics 101, you will be taught by your professor that linguistics is descriptive. It's not prescriptive, and prescriptive grammar doesn't apply in linguistics. So I think basically all linguists will argue that. Tyler Ladd says, shoot, I super chatted and didn't get a response. Yeah, sorry, I'm not seeing all the super chats pop up. I might be on the wrong interface here, but let me have a look at that screen and I'll look for you, Tyler. Let me see. Oh, okay, Tyler Ladd, here you are. Thank you for your super chat, man. You said, do you speak formally or less so when not at home? When not at home, you mean when I'm out with my friends? Depends. Depends what we're talking about. If we're just talking casually about unimportant things, then I'll speak informally. If we have discussions about sort of important issues, which we often do, then I'll focus more and try to make my message really clear, so I'll speak a little more formally. Yeah, I've got a lot of smart friends, and when we talk, we tend to talk about important stuff or deep stuff, so I think more carefully about what I say, and then I tend to speak more formally. If we're just talking nonsense about silly subjects, then I don't really worry about it, and I speak more informally. I see another super chat from Miles Deadmont. He says, keep it up. Thank you, Miles. I appreciate it. Thank you for your super chat. I guess that's a super sticker. They've got super chats and super stickers, which make the little cute animations pop up. And then, is this Machete? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Machete or Machete. It says, love your videos. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the super chats. It's always cool to get those. I don't expect them, but when people send those, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Mark Donovan says, what is the function of a grammarian with regard to language control? Is there a role to maintain tradition? Where did it go? I lost it. Okay, well, anyway, I got the idea. I guess that's how they see their role. They see it as their role to sort of keep the language from changing too quickly, maybe, to be conservative and hold the language back so it doesn't really change. I'm not sure exactly how they're perceiving it, but I would say, yeah, they just, for some reason, they think that there's one state of the language which is frozen in time, and we're not supposed to deviate from that or progress beyond that. From a practical point of view, I can understand why they would want to slow it down and not have the language change too quickly, so we can keep reading books from 100 years ago, so people can communicate easily. So for those practical reasons, it makes sense, but I'm not sure if that's how they're perceiving it. I think they might be perceiving it more as a cultural thing, like they don't want overall cultural change to take place, so they're just conservative in general. I'm not quite sure. Deutscher Ball says, hey Paul, I wanted to tell you that your videos have been tremendously helpful for me as I study 38 languages. Thank you so much. Keep up the fantastic work. Wow, 38 languages. That's a lot. I appreciate the comment. Thank you. Do you study 38 at the same time? 38 is a lot. I tend to study one at a time, and maybe two if one of them is a language that I'm already more advanced in or that I'm reviewing. I see another super chat. I see one from Lance. Lance says, between years of watching you, Laushu, and Steve Kaufman, I pulled the trigger and I'm doing my Bachelor of Arts in French and Portuguese for 2021. Awesome. Good job, Lance. That's really cool. Yeah, Laushu and Steve Kaufman, I know both of them. I've seen their videos and they've been online for ages. Laushu has been around since when? Like, as soon as I started using YouTube, basically like 2010 or 2012 or something. He's been around for a long time, and just recently his channel skyrocketed like the past year or two. So hats off to him. He deserves it because he's one of the originals. Steve Kaufman, yeah, he's the founder of Link, L-I-N-Q, I think is how it's pronounced, or how it's spelled, which is a useful language learning tool that you can check out. Caroline H. says, hi Paul, I've learned that standardized is a better term than standard, since it emphasizes that labeling a language as standard is a social process, not a natural feature of a variety. Thoughts? Yeah, that makes sense. It's related to something I talked about at the end of my last live stream, when I talked about how a subtle choice in word, a subtle change in word choice can affect the meaning of what you're saying. The example I gave was slave versus enslaved, and this is standard versus standardized. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it's a distinction that I need to worry about that much, but I see the point of it. I think standardized makes sense. Have you ever dug deep into conlangs? That's LP said that. Conlangs. Conlangs. Well, conlangs, I did a video on Esperanto. That's the only conlang I've studied for a while. I studied for a couple months in preparation of making that video, and it was fun. I really liked Esperanto, but I lost interest after I made the video because it's not really useful. I could go back to it and get it back quite easily and get better at it, but I just didn't see much use in Esperanto. And it doesn't, something about it left me feeling a bit cold, I have to imagine. If I describe the reason, what would I say? I guess because there's no culture associated with Esperanto. And one of the reasons I'm into languages is because they help me learn about the cultures that speak them, right? There's sort of an access way into that culture, and they give you a way to enjoy different elements of that culture. That's sort of what excites me about learning a language. So when I learned Esperanto, I thought, okay, it's kind of cool. It's cool because it's easy and you make fast progress, so you feel motivated. But I didn't feel like, wow, this is a language that I love, right? It's more about the culture for me. And I haven't gotten into any other conlangs, only that one. Someone said, eat your cereal. No, cereal is basically all carbohydrates. And I'm on a low-carb diet. Someone said, so the standard language should connect the dialects, not erase the dialects, right? Right. Basically, that's it. Yeah, I mean, a standard language or a standardized language, as Caroline said, a standardized language basically serves as a bridge between the different dialects and unites the speakers of different spoken varieties of that language. That's the purpose they serve. I don't think that there's any reason to intentionally get rid of dialects, but there's a reason to teach people the standard language, I would say. Okay, I think I'm going to end the stream pretty soon. You might hear that my voice is starting to die a little bit, and also I might seem kind of spaced out, and I'm pausing for 5 seconds here and there because my brain is going dead. It's sort of doing these live streams is a sort of high intensity process. You're looking at a million things at once, so you have to really try to focus under immense distraction. So I'm going to finish in a second. Thank you everyone for watching. I appreciate it. People who gave me super chats, then many thanks to you. I am very happy when I get those. Not because it's like, hey, give me money, not like that, but it shows appreciation, so I feel really happy to get those. All right, thank you everyone. I'll see you again in the next stream. Remember, if you want to get these streams long-term, if you want to get the older ones, this is only episode 2, but you can get episode 1 if you want. It's archived on Patreon, and that's where I will store all of the old episodes of these live streams. It's Langfocus Cafe. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.